Putin will allocate a record share of the budget since Soviet times to military purposes next year and for the next 3 years. The Kremlin intends to spend almost 30% or 13 trillion rubles on the army and weapons procurement. Another nearly 4 trillion rubles are earmarked for the national security category, which includes the budgets of the Ministry of Internal Affairs, the National Guard, and the security services. In total, the security forces will receive almost 17 trillion rubles, which is nearly 40% of the Russian budget. According to the document, next year spending on the war will exceed the country's revenues. The Kremlin expects to collect 40 trillion rubles in taxes from its citizens. At the same time, expenditures will amount to 44 trillion. The resulting deficit will be about 2% of the country's total GDP.
They have already approved the planned budget for next year with a deficit of 3.8. This raises the question of how the financial state of the country is deteriorating, and most likely this target will not be met either. The deficit will be even larger. There is nowhere to get the money from. Right now, the price of oil is falling. Plus, there is the war with Ukraine. The Russian economy cannot withstand these two blows.
Oil and gas revenues, which have dropped by 20% this year, are not expected to grow significantly next year, according to economists' forecasts. And the Russian government intends to squeeze almost 3 trillion rubles in new taxes from the non-resource sector of the economy. To make ends meet, Putin is raising the VAT rate to 22% and launching a radical tax reform for small businesses, as a result of which hundreds of thousands of entrepreneurs will lose the ability to use the simplified taxation system. A number of key social and medical programs will also be cut. The share of social spending in the Russian treasury will shrink to 25%, reaching its lowest level in 20 years. For example, funding for the Russian national project Long and Active Life will be cut by 26%. Spending on the program to modernize the primary healthcare sector will be slashed 2.5 times. The Emergency Medical Services Development Project will lose 28% of its funding, while programs to combat diabetes, cancer, and cardiovascular diseases will be cut by 13%, 3%, and 2.5% respectively.
Putin can't stop. Maybe he realizes it's a disaster, but he can't stop. He's afraid. It's a sign that he's been doing something wrong, but he can't admit it because then he'd lose his chances of keeping his position and his life. That's why he'll try to fight to the last drop of blood and the last ruble. The only question is that's not so far off.
Putin's growing war expenditures have even stirred pragmatic Europe into action. In response, the EU is rapidly building up its military strength and increasing defense spending. Germany leads in plans to increase its defense budget. Berlin is preparing to spend 25% more for these purposes. Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Sweden, and Poland are not lagging behind either. The European Union has also prepared a military mobility package, which will allow troops and equipment to be moved much more quickly if necessary. According to media reports, European countries will create a military Schengen. This project includes the creation of a pan-European military mobility area by 2027. In particular, the plan includes coordinating the use of trucks, railway platforms, ferries, and all transport routes capable of carrying tanks and artillery.